there's always something, whether it's physical or mental, because that's the human condition. Every day of your life, there's going to be something that doesn't go well or right. There's going to be something that's negative. There's going to be some discomfort. And most people will seize upon that and focus on that. I learned and I taught that, we accept and be non-attached to what happens to us, and we take control of what's happening in our mind.
Top leaders, meaningful conversation, actionable advice, bulldoze complacency, ignite inspiration, create impact. Produced by Southwestern family of companies. This is the Action Catalyst.
Are you interested in advertising with the Action Catalyst? Our listeners could be hearing about your brand right here, right now. For details, shoot us an email at info@theactioncatalyst.com.
Mark Devine has a degree in economics from Colgate University and an MBA in finance from NYU. His first career was as a CPA, but 4 years after joining, Mark left and pursued his vision to become an elite Navy SEAL officer. And what's cool, not only was he in the Navy SEALs, but he graduated as the honor man. The number one ranked trainee of his SEAL class, served 9 years active duty and 11 years as a reserve SEAL. He is the New York Times bestselling author of The Way of the SEAL and 8 Weeks to SEAL Fit. Also an accomplished martial artist and just an awesome guy. Mark, welcome to the show, man. This concept of unbeatable mind, I think it's so relevant. One of the things that you talk about is the 20X factor. Can you tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, sure. Most people have heard of Hell Week. Hell Week is the 1 week during the 9 months of SEAL in-doc training or basic training they call BUDS and then SQT. And so it was 1 week that's kind of famous. And that's the week called Hell Week where we trained from, Sunday afternoon until Friday, the following Friday, around the clock without any sleep. Actually, they give us 4 hours just to mess with us on Thursday. But so it's kind of legendary, and it really is, it's multi-purposed, but I would say the dominant purpose is to teach those that make it through it that they're capable of practically anything that they put their mind to. The reason I use the 20X term is because as I was preparing myself for my own Hell Week, I had some unique rituals. My teammates were all sitting and messing with their gear, and we had this big tent set up outside of BUDS, and they're kind of like anxiously awaiting what we call breakout, which is the start. And I had kind of wandered off over the berm, and just sat and looked at the ocean and just began my breathing and kind of meditation practice, what I now call, winning in my mind before the battle. And as I was sitting there, one of the instructors came up to me and he kind of smiled. He looked at me and I don't know what was going through his head, but he must have been thinking, okay, this guy is a little bit different and he's doing something different and I get it. And he came to me and he goes, Mark, you got nothing to worry about because you're capable of 20 times more than you think you are. Have fun, basically have fun with this one. Because he knew for some reason that I was going to make it through. And when the training started, again, the first 50 some odd hours are the hardest because that's the new reality of this, your life circumstances setting in. Your body is all of a sudden saying, I am exhausted. I haven't slept. I'm freezing cold. I'm chafed. I'm bleeding. I just ache all over the place. But your mind says, okay, that's all fine and good, but you're not quitting. You got 3.5 more days. And so that was what was going through my mind. In the meantime, my teammates were quitting left and right. We started my class with 185 students, all, highly qualified super studs. By the time we got to Hell Week, we were probably down to 120 or something like that. And then by the end of 50 hours of Hell Week, we were down to 60. And so they were just dropping like flies. And I was just telling myself, can't quit. Just keep going, one foot in front of the other, words to that effect. My body started to get stronger. So, after days without sleep, round the clock physical training, most people, conventional wisdom would be that you'd be breaking down and, you'd be almost catatonic. And my body started to build muscle mass and it started to get stronger and I started to get more alert. Now, I was still probably, if you were to give me some sort of test, I would probably have, failed any higher cognitive functions or skills, but I was able to stay focused on the tasks that they were giving to me and to stay focused on my team and to drive through. And I was getting stronger and feeling stronger. So that was really profound to me because I realized, afterwards that instructor was right. I truly was capable 20 times more than I thought. And Hell Week proved it to me. And so that's become kind of a central tenet of my my teaching today is that, you are capable of 20 times more and then 20 times again, but you got to prove it to yourself in order to believe it at a really gut heart level. It's not a cognitive thing. You can't just think yourself that you're capable of that much more, because that's not enough. You've got to know it deeply.
Give us an example for some people that are not that familiar with Hell Week. What are some of the other things that you're doing?
The evolutions, they call every event an evolutions. The evolutions range from anywhere from, a couple hours to like 6 or 8 hours long. And they had us doing, SEAL-like stuff, but not super complicated. Like, we weren't jumping out of helicopters with live ammunition and bursting down doors, because this, wasn't the purpose of the training. Training was to attrite those people who weren't mentally tough or emotionally resilient and couldn't be good teammates, and to prove those of us who were mentally tough, emotionally resilient, and good teammates that we were capable of freaking anything. So the types of things we were doing, like one evolution was to take our 350-pound logs and, to take them on like a 10-mile journey, right? Carrying them over our heads and on our shoulders without putting them down. And so that was, interesting challenge, to say the least, in the soft sand. Another was to paddle our little rubber boats. They're called IBS. I'm not even sure what that acronym was, but we called it itty bitty ship.
Okay.
Little rubber boats. And there were 7 of us, and we had to paddle these itty bitty ships around Coronado Island in San Diego at night. And that was, I think, on like Wednesday night or something of Hell Week, and everybody was hallucinating, including myself. It's like 2 a.m, and we're just stroke, and the guy in front of me, literally, his paddle slipped out of his hand and started floating past me, and I grabbed it, and his arms kept moving. He kept stroking the paddle. So I took the paddle, I just smacked him over the head with it, and I said, "Hey, dummy, here's your paddle." He's like, "Holy cow. I didn't even know I lost that thing." A little bit, longer, a little bit further along, I saw this massive wave well up in front of me, and I'm like, "Water, water." That's what we used to say, when we go through Surf Passage. So, and a huge wave came up. And so I ducked down, and everyone looks at me like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Duck, water." And then I look up and there's nothing there. I'm like, so your mind, our mind, the body first goes and then the mind goes. And that's kind of the whole point here, is that the mind starts to play tricks on you, and it's your cognitive mind, which is, the reality is fraying, and the structures that you used to hang on to as real are starting to shift and to fray. And so you can't rely on that anymore. And so that was a great lesson for me too. I was like, I can't rely on the way I used to perceive my mind working, because it's not working that way for me under stress. It's not working right under stress.
So if you go, okay, that your body is capable of 20 times more, how do you access that?
Yeah, that's the holy grail. So in the SEALs, it's just through these intense experiences that you like crack open your body-mind system and reorganize it in ways that I don't even think anyone really understands. I don't even think the SEALs understand it. They just know it works. That's why they'll never give up Hell Week. They've had so many, kind of peacetime attempts to get rid of the Hell Week program because they think it's kind of inhumane, and, they think it may be too hard. And, there have been people who've died in the training and stuff, but very rare actually. And they're from natural causes, like, someone dies of a heart attack, or they have an accident and they drown, but no one's died from exhaustion that I'm aware of in Hell Week. So anyways, what I'm saying is the SEALs the training is just brilliant, and it's evolved over, 60 years to really prepare SEALs for the most rigorous challenges, missions, and environments in the world, and to believe that anything's possible, to believe that they can accomplish any mission. And so, you look at the success rate of the SEALs, and it kind of bears it out that that's a pretty effective training method. So I don't want to mess with it, but I don't think they really understand, beyond kind of like the combat effectiveness and some of the work that David Grossman has done with his understanding about how to condition a warrior for the rigors of combat. I think that's all like philosophy and research, and it's really interesting, but I don't think they understand what's happening at a emotional, even quasi-spiritual level or metaphysical level. And also with regard to the brain and the mind and the nervous system, and how all those things are reorganizing, through neuroplasticity and also epigenetics, so that SEALs are kind of like turning on and off different genes. And I would say, if there was a warrior gene, then the SEALs have learned how to turn that on in a big way, to where, you get activities like, I'm willing to light lay my life down for my teammate. You don't see that very often in modern world. That is a very much of a warrior gene that's been turned on, where you put yourself, your teammates so far above yourself. And that's one of the reasons that the training is so effective, because nothing gets done alone as a SEAL. That's what we call the SEAL teams. And when you have an individual, let's say take Mark Devine, who knows that he's capable of 20 times more, and then you put him with a team of 14 others in a platoon, or maybe, 35 others in a troop, or 40 others in a troop. And every one of those individuals knows that they're capable of 20 times more. And they're all watching each other's back and care about each other and know that each other is absolutely essential to getting the mission done. Then you get an effect that's not like 20 times, but like 20 times, 20 times, 20 times, 20 times, you know what I mean? Just multiply it by a number of people. It's an enormous geometric effect.
So take me to preparing yourself, right? Because I think, like most of us are probably never going to be in this situation, but how do you sort of mentally prepare yourself? What do you do when it's real, like right before it's real?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're right. Not everyone is going to go through SEAL training, nor would you want to, frankly, because it sucks. So I've kind of spent the balance of my, the last 15 years trying to figure out, well, how do you train? Not that same experience, even though, through my SEAL Fit program, we have recreated the Hell Week experience, and it has an incredible effect, and civilians can go through it. But through my Unbeatable Mind training, I looked at it and said, okay, so what's happening? And I tried to understand what is happening at a mind and a body and a spirit and nervous system level. And can I kind of parse out those different elements and train them? And so I began doing that with SEAL candidates back in 2007, 2008, because I started training SEAL candidates. I wanted to help them succeed the way I did in SEAL training, and to have a better career and be more focused and make better decisions in battle, and to avoid PTSD and all those things. And so I began to draw more, or kind of like, I would say, equal parts from my Navy SEAL days with my yoga and martial arts training, because I realized that the Eastern practices had a lot of tools, and they were a developmental path for accessing greater power, almost 20x power, and developing internal potential, and integrating and being able to use your mind in a unique way, or a better way. And this is lacking in the West. There really isn't any developmental models that I'm aware of that didn't come from either the martial arts or yoga. There was some understanding of it philosophically through integral theory and transpersonal psychology and stuff like that, but there weren't any practices or paths, if you know what I mean, in the traditional sense. And so I looked at my own martial arts training and my own, I went deep into yoga and into I've been to multiple teacher trainings, and was even developing our own yoga to teach to SEALs, which I, had to really simplify and chunk it out into drills and discard any woo-woo, you know what I mean? I took the foo out of the kung fu and took the woo-woo out of the yoga to teach it. And so I came up with these skills. I call them, they line sort of with what the SEALs call the big four, but there's more than four, but the biggest and most powerful ones are, first is to develop control over your breath, and to use your breath as a center post of your training, right? Because the breath is what will lead you to being in physiological control of your body. And so the studies have now verified the power of breath control for stress management, stress release, and for triggering the parasympathetic nervous system to bleed off stress. So it's really, really healthy for you and healthy for your nervous system. But beyond that, the breath is a way to stay focused, because after all, the brain is a organ of the body. And when your body is calmer, your brain is calmer. I mean, it's experienced subjectively as literally a lower brain, cycle rate. And you kind of an alpha beta when you're really calm, and it's healthier, right? And you're detoxing when you breathe deeply and cyclically, and you don't have the choppy patterns associated with anxious, emotional states. So the breath control is that first skill that I started teaching the SEAL candidates. And that alone, and I call the practice box breathing, that alone had a profound impact on their ability to focus and remain clear in the heat of battle and that type of thing. And then I said, okay, so once I'm physiologically and physically in control, and I'm clear-headed and able to focus, then it's about creating the conditions in my mind so that I can stay focused on the right thing at the right time, stay focused on my teammates, and stay focused on a positive outcome. Whereas, the common individual will seize upon, something that's going wrong. And that could be like, I'm suffering because this sucks, or, I'm in pain, or my back hurts, or I can't do this because it's too hard. I can't lift this 300-pound log up anymore. There's always something, whether it's physical or mental or something really practical, some challenge or crisis in your life. There's always something, right? Because that's the human condition. Every day of your life, there's going to be something that doesn't go well or right. There's going to be something that's negative. There's going to be some discomfort. And most people will seize upon that and focus on that. And then, of course, that which you focus on tends to grow, or to, it attracts energy to it. And so I learned and I taught these SEALs that, we accept and be non-attached to what happens to us, and we take control in a positive sense of what's happening in our mind, in both our rational mind as well as our emotional mind. And so we maintain a really positive, energetic attitude and mindset. I call this positivity. The trained mind, as soon as that resistance is experienced, will begin to dialogue in a way that generates power instead of weakness. And so when that log starts to rub the shoulder or starts to get hard, instead of saying, holy cow, I don't think I can do this, or man, this thing's heavy, or how long do we have to do this? Another 3 hours. You basically shift that to some sort of powerful statement that you also associate with an energetic and emotional state. So one of the classic ones that I have is, this is an easy day. I got this. Piece of cake. This is an easy day. I got this piece of cake. I'm feeling good and I'm looking good. I ought to be in Hollywood. And so then your internal dialogue, this takes over and starts to drown out any of that other dialoguing. And then you begin to, this ties into the third skill. The third skill is imaging. So that includes visualization, image projection in terms of the future, what, desired outcomes, because if you can see the win in your mind, then you can achieve the win if you believe it and act forcefully on it, right? And that comes straight from Sun Tzu. The victorious warrior wins in his mind first and then enters the battle. And so the combination of the second skill, which is maintaining and developing and maintaining a positive direction and a positive routine and a positive emotional pattern associated with your thought. So this is, requires like training the brain, training the mind to act this way all the time, especially when the challenges appear. This then connects to your ability to see yourself succeeding in those challenges, see yourself dominating in those challenging environments, being able to maintain a clear picture of the win in spite of the dark night of the soul moments that might come over you or the team. And, you can connect back to that image of the win and go, oh yeah, that's it. That's why I'm here. Right. And so this goes, there's so many subtle skills that are involved. How we use our eyes is important. So if if I need to lift the log up and put it on my other shoulder, then I shift my mind and my gaze into a very practical, this is my one task right here, right now. I look at the log, I coordinate the movements with my team. We breathe together and hoist it up on the command and lower it over. And that's the only thing I'm doing and thinking of in that moment. Okay. But then let's say right when that's done and we're like, I've got a little relief. It's on the other shoulder now. And we're going to take another 100 paces or so. Then I soften my gaze, and my gaze, my eyes literally go from, pupils dilated. I'm focused on a task and I'm outwardly focused, to where my eyes go really soft and almost like they go wide, and I'm using my peripheral vision. And in that state, your mind will soften, and it's almost like, just letting go and turning inward. And in that inward, even though my eyes are open, I have access to my imagery. And I can go back and check in with it, or the image is there for me. Does that make sense? So again, this is the tools are, how do we use our mind effectively? Our minds are so much more powerful when we learn how to use them, right? And so we've been trained here in the West to really dominantly be focused on our cognition, our rational mind, our thinking, right? And then if you're creative, they say, oh yeah, you're creative, so you're using that right brain and you have creative powers. The reality is we all have the capacity to think better and to avoid our cognitive bias. So that's a skill that we have to train for. But we also have the capacity to release that, to literally put that area of our mind, that active area of our mind to rest, like to turn the dial down significantly so that you can open up to what I call direct perception, perceiving things just the way they are right now without having to judge or analyze or anything. And a massive amount of information flows into that. The fourth skill, by the way, is task orientation. But if you show up doing everything that I just explained because you've trained to do it, right? It's not a cognitive thing. It's this is a very visceral process. Then, what you're going to get on the other side is an energetic synchronization.
When I think Navy SEAL, I think tough as nails. I think physical, but everything you're describing here, this is all mental.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the mental, essentially the human being has the body, the mind, and the spirit. If all you focus on is a body, you're going to be a one-dimensional being. The body follows the mind. We learned that in the SEAL training as a tenet of what I teach as SEAL Fit. The body follows the mind. And so you could be physically fit and still fail at a sporting event if your mind is not conditioned properly. You could be the most talented athlete, and we see this over and over again, and still fail. You might win one or two times, but you're going to fail if your mind isn't conditioned right. So really the mind is the preeminent. Everything flows from the mind. And then behind the mind is the spirit, and it's beyond the scope of this conversation, but I could almost make that same statement that once you connect with the spirit, with your spirit, then everything flows from that. And the mind becomes even more refined and finely tuned with universal principles. And that's when your ultimate power comes out. So you're truly at your most complete, fullest self when body, mind, and spirit are all aligned and working together, SEALs who are aligned like that and everyone's operating that way, they literally are shaping their enemy's minds. SEALs shape their enemy's mind with their violence of action and offensive mindset, because everyone is thinking, we got this. We are running toward the sound of gunfire. We're going to dominate this battle. We're going to, take it to the enemy, whatever. Everyone's thinking that way. And like I said, at a very subtle level, that breeds fear in the enemy, and the way we act and the way we think and the way we show up on the battlefield breeds fear in the enemy. Now, they may not even know it, but it happens, right? And that's why they, their actions and reactions are going to be weaker than ours. In Vietnam, the Vietnamese NVA used to call the SEALs devils with green faces because just the way they got, the operators back then would show up in the middle of the jungle, out of nowhere, and their faces were painted because they were using camouflage, and they learned how to stalk and to be completely silent as they moved through the jungle. And they would literally just show up and wreak havoc on the enemy and then disappear. And that's what I mean. That's an energetic, obviously there's practical skills, but it's also a mindset that the SEALs had that, hey, we're going to be devils with green faces and we're going to scare out of the enemy. And they won practically every altercation.
So where should people go to connect with you if they want to learn about SEAL Fit? I know you got the Unbeatable Mind book and course, and where do you want people to find you?
Well, I think you said that if someone's interested in these principles, then there's two books that I have out that kind of cover down on them. One is probably the first one to read is Unbeatable Mind, where I introduce these principles, and then the second is called The Way of the SEAL. Both are great books for learning these principles. And then if you want to find me on the web, SEAL Fit, all one word, SEALFIT.com, has a ton of content, a ton of free resources, and we've got some great video training, and that's where all our events, stuff like that.
Well, then last little thing, man, if somebody's out there listening right now and they're realizing they're going, whoa, I am so far from this unbeatable mind, I am so not mentally tough, I'm losing every battle in my head before it even begins. What's one practice you would suggest you need to start doing this immediately?
Yeah, it's the first skill I alluded to earlier, box breathing. And, if this is the only thing that someone gets out of this podcast of yours, then it's time well spent. And so that is simply to begin a daily practice of breathing where you breathe through your nose, your nostrils, with your mouth closed, and ideally your eyes closed, and just sit in a chair, straight spine, and you're going to inhale to a count of 4 or 5, hold your breath for a count of 5, exhale for a count of 5, hold your breath for a count of 5. So you're breathing in a box or a square pattern. And to do this, a minimum of 5 minutes, but ideally for 20 minutes a day. Best time is probably first thing in the morning when you wake up. This is not meditation, but although it's the precursor to meditation because it's got the physiological benefits of resetting your nervous system, bleeding off stress, and clarifying your mind. And so literally you're going to detox your mind and get your mind really focused. And then the secondary benefit is it's a concentration practice. And a lot of people fail with meditation because the preparatory practice for meditation is concentration. And so we need to learn how to concentrate on this one thing. And that box breathing pattern is the one thing. And so this practice in itself, I've got, surgeons who use it for surgery, during their surgery. And of course, Navy SEALs practice this, variations of this. And all sorts of people have found, great benefit from it. So I would start there.
Mark Divine, first of all, thank you for your service, and we appreciate you, man.
Thank you for saying that. Thanks for having me on as well.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.